Alright, g'day IB Psychology students. As a moderator, I can see a lot of the mistakes that students make in their IAs. I see what they do well, I see what they don't do so well. So in this video, I want to explain the 5 biggest mistakes students make in the exploration, and that's going to help you stop making the same mistakes. Right, so let's have a look at the top 5 mistakes students make in their IB Psychology IA explorations. Right, so number 5, the 1 or more 5 of the aspects is missing. So in the exploration, you have to explain your design, sample, participants, controls, and the materials. You have to have all 5. Commonly when I'm moderating IAs, I see that students maybe do 3 or 4. Most students are pretty good at trying to do this, but yeah, you need to make sure you get all 5, okay, or you can't score top marks. Now, I would suggest that you use subheadings to show your examiner how you're completing the requirements. So you have a big heading, exploration, and then you have a subheading, design, in bold, and then a paragraph on that. Then a new heading, sample, paragraph, participants, and so on. So make sure you get all 5 aspects in the exploration. The number 4 mistake that students make is they don't explain the characteristics of the participants, right? And so you have to explain it. Give a reason why you chose these particular participants. And this is a tricky one, but it's one that's often done quite poorly. Now, I would focus on 2 characteristics, okay, because it's a plural here, and do your best at trying to explain 2 different characteristics. So I think, I don't know if language is going to be relevant to your IA, but it quite often is. If you're doing anything that involves words or wordless or like manipulations of language, that's quite a common one. And you're probably choosing people that have a certain fluency in a particular language. That could be one. Maybe their age or ethnicity. You can see here from my sample IA, this is in the IA Teacher Support Pack, link in the description, but I pretended to do an IA on the effects of media on body dissatisfaction. You could not do this in your IA. This would be an unethical study to do. But here we can see I described my participants. Now again, I didn't actually carry out the study, right? I just want you to be clear on this. I just pretended like I did, just so I could write up an example report. So I've said I wanted to be people over 16 years old because of ethical reasons. Now, that's probably not going to be an issue with your study, or maybe it is, but here I've given one reason why I chose the particular age of the participants, and also English fluency so they could comprehend the questionnaire. Now, I put a little note here, see my explanations of age and gender in the controls. And I think this is a good strategy to do. Sometimes when you're explaining why you chose a particular characteristic, you're actually also explaining a control, and a control is a separate section. So instead of writing the same thing twice, you can just put a little note here. All right. So on that point, no, I think I'll do this next time. The design type is not described or explained. So the design type refers to, did you use repeated measures, independent samples, or matched pairs? Now, you're probably going to have done repeated measures or independent samples. Now, you have to, first of all, state what design type you used, and then this is my tip here: follow this method for all 5 sections of the exploration. I've got a separate video where I explain how to get top marks in this section, but okay, state what did you do. We used repeated measures, or we used independent samples. All right, state it. Describe how you did it. Okay, so how did you use repeated measures? So describe the procedures here, or how did you use independent samples? Okay, so actually, and now the reason why you want to do this is, so as an examiner, we know that you're identifying the proper method. So it's quite often that students will just say, oh, we use the repeated measures because, and you do want to have a little bit of description there of how you did it. Okay, and then you get into the explanation of why you did it. And again, if the explanation of why is it's controlling for a particular variable like order effects or participant variability, then again you can, in your control, you can just reference that in the control section or vice versa to save yourself writing the same thing twice. All right, number 2, the choice of materials is also not explained. So this is a common one. Most students are pretty good at trying to explain their sample and their design, but the participants and the materials is one that's commonly missed out. So what I would explain is, things like, in your, list your ethics in your materials list before I forget. That's an important one. So you can, you can use bullet points, right? Informed consent form C, appendix 2, or something like that. And then that just covers your base with the ethical considerations being applied. Okay, that's not stated specifically in the rubric, so you might miss it. So do put your ethics in the materials list, your ethical guidelines that you followed, like informed consent. Now, explaining the choice of materials, I would focus on what did you use to manipulate your independent variable. Okay, because you would have had to have some sort of material, or if you've done something, you've shown a different video, you've chosen different word lists, you've given them different equipment, apparatus, or you put them in different groups, you've done something, you've probably, most likely, used some sort of material to manipulate your independent variable. So state what you used and explain why you used that particular instrument. Same thing with measuring a dependent variable. Okay, you've done something to measure it, like if it's a type of questionnaire or some sort of test. Now, are you using the exact ones that came from the original study? And that's fine. If so, why? Why are you taking those? Why haven't you adapted them? If you have adapted the materials from the original, then again, explain why. So if we see in my case, I didn't, right? But let's pretend that I used a body shape questionnaire. And I've chosen this instrument because research have included that it is, and then here I've found a little bit of evidence for why I use that particular, so that was what I used to measure the dependent variable, right? And that's why. Now my video clips, this is what I used to manipulate my independent variable, and so I didn't, again, right? So I just want to reiterate that I didn't actually do the study because it would be very terrible to do this on actual students. So I'm emphasizing I didn't actually do it, but if I were to do it, I could use a Baywatch trailer and I could use a Grown Ups trailer, and we can see, right, so one of the reasons why I found they had a similar rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so that wouldn't be their popularity wouldn't be a confounding variable. Simple reason, right? Now, again, I would aim for explaining two materials, okay? Because even if you do one poorly, but at least you're trying to, if you're attempting to do both, it's going to show the examiner that you're trying. Because it is actually quite hard to explain the materials. Right, the number one mistake that students make in their exploration is they don't describe how they gathered their sample. Okay, they often, with the same thing with the design, they say, hey, we use this particular design or we use this particular sampling method, and they get straight into the why. Now, you might still be able to get full marks by doing that, but I would just suggest that you still describe how did you get your sample. And one reason for that is the examiners, again, same thing research design, same thing with the sample. We want to know that you've actually identified the right sample. If you don't tell us how, you say we used an opportunity sample because it was convenient. If you don't tell us how you got your sample, how do we know you used an opportunity sample? Okay, we used an opportunity sample because our teacher emailed all the other teachers and saw who was available at that particular time. That's how I often get my sample for my studies, right? And then so now I've got you state what you did, describe how, and then explain why. It's an extra sentence or two, but it can be really valuable. So here's my best advice with the exploration, and in fact for the whole IA as well. You're constantly balancing validity and practicality, and even ethicality in there as well, right? Those three things, validity, practicality, ethicality, those three things we're constantly balancing and juggling between each other. And so in your explanation of what you did, you can explain things based on validity. We wanted to get the most accurate and valid results and have high internal validity. And you can also explain things based on practicality. Now, I think I would tend to always try to do both. Don't rely on just explanations of practicality. We used an opportunity sample because it was convenient. Sometimes you can't really escape that. But for example, a design, if you're explaining your design type, you really want to explain it based on validity. Why did you use that particular design to control for particular variables, right? Participant variability or order effects or something like that. So just remember, you're constantly balancing validity and practicality, and focus on validity as much as possible. This comes the same thing. I'm going to give the same advice when I talk about the evaluation. Right. Explain one reason based on each. Oh, okay. And so, yeah, if possible, you give one reason based on validity, one reason based on practicality. Okay, so this is a good thing to focus on for your exploration. But again, the most important thing, state, describe, explain all 5 characteristics. Because we see here, right, research design, sampling technique, choice of participants, controlled variables, choice of materials. You have to explain all these things. If you don't give a reason why they're used, then you suddenly find yourself in this particular category here. Now, the exploration is only worth 4 marks, but actually it's probably going to be the longest section of your report if it's done properly. But it should be the most straightforward to do, okay? Because the requirements here, they're very simple to understand what the requirements are. All right, now here's the checklist. I've copied this straight from the IA Teacher Support Pack materials, but you can just pause this if you want to, if you've written your explanation, and you can use this here. I'll include that. All right, okay. Right, that's it. Okay, so all that jazz, subscribe, bloody blah 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 blah, store, internal assessment, support pack, all the links, everything's in the description. I think this, yep, you know that by now. I really hope that was helpful. Good luck with your IA. Let me know how it goes.